I'm John Street, and you're watching PAX 8 Live.
Welcome to Academy Live. Welcome to Technically Unraveled.
Welcome to the game on PAX 8 Live. This is James Davis from the PAX 8 Academy again. Academy Live is really designed to empower MSPs to learn and grow the way that best suits them.
How to grow and mature your business on demand, instructor-led, peer, and coaching.
We talk about all the cybersecurity shenanigans you need to be aware of.
That's when you really need to know, are they security conscious?
Technology businesses and
Inspiring our audience to work on their business.
Understanding what made businesses tick.
I'm really excited to talk about this course.
How can we make an MSP more efficient and make them better at serving their clients?
How do we not screw it up? We do the basics well.
PAX 8 is laser focused on helping our partners grow, get efficient, and reduce risk.
Ask yourself, what are you going to do differently tomorrow to grow your business?
We look forward to seeing you next time. We'll see you then.
Are you guys excited? Are you ready to start beyond?
Who's coming to Beyond 24? You want a little more?
I think folks are really excited about what they can do with their customers and how they can help grow their business.
It's a massive opportunity for all of you.
Cheers to the channel community.
All right, welcome back to the game. I'm clearly Dom Kirby, and in just a second I'll be joined by Matt Lee, and we'll have our special guest Tiffany Ricks from Hackware. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, do all the stuff. You know how Dom normally says it. I'm not that great, but if you will, click the buttons, and let's jump right into this week's news, and we'll run from there. All right. Well, I think one of the things that we're going to talk about first is, has everybody paid attention to, first off, the Screen Connect situation that we've been talking about? We talked about it last Friday. I hope that we find you patched. And if you have, one thing I want to add, Jason Slagle's really made a pivot about this, is that we have to make sure that if you had a user.xml file modified, if you dealt with that you are actually able to do some incident response and validate that they didn't do anything else, right? Let's just make sure that that's a point. But I also, pivoting from that, want to talk about Change Healthcare, right? So we have been hearing this Change Healthcare, or United Healthcare's subsidiary through Optum, has been having a ransomware incident, believedly, right, for the last week or so, which meant 37,000 or so pharmacies have been down, unable to maybe file claims, things to that nature. But Optum Healthcare, Optum and Change Healthcare were initially attributed to Screen Connect, and we just basically got the feedback that A, it wasn't Lockbit, right? Even though they said it was Lockbit in the first week or so, everybody believed that. It was Alpha V or Black Cat, if I understand correctly, and they've already stepped out and said, hey, we actually didn't use Screen Connect, stupid, right? As his thumb to the HS ISAC, or health sector ISAC, which is a lot of what this conversation's about, is that ISAC guidance about network connectivity. In this ISAC guidance, they even say, like, here's the IOCs, and here's Screen Connect stuff, and here's all this. They're making this confluence. And Dom, what I wanted to, we can go back from this article, what I wanted to bring you on and talk about was, like, 4 hours to report. It's preposterous, right? Look at some of the 8K timings now. Like when it was first introduced, it was 4 hours. We're still a week and a half later, and we just now have some attribution. What are your thoughts on that, just in general?
I think it's complicated, right? Like the tough thing about a short reporting window is you're going to have very limited details you can report, and the risk of getting it completely wrong is pretty high.
Yeah.
So I also,
yeah.
I'm also,
well, look at Nation State, right? In their 8K,
Yeah.
they said a Nation State player. I don't believe
Yeah.
Alpha V is directly. They're financially motivated as an actor, right? As I understand it.
Right.
So,
and you have to be careful about those things, especially if you're making state on state accusations. But in general, I also think the attribution of Screen Connect came a little early. I think it was happen chance on timing that the Screen Connect issue dropped and the Change Healthcare issue dropped, and all of that came together, and we all made conjecture, right? So I think us as a community probably
100%.
jumped some guns. I do find it entertaining as hell that Lockbit, came out. I'm sorry, Alfie came out and said, "Nah."
Alfie goes,
no.
wasn't us. Like the bottom line was,
Yeah.
P.S. stupid. Like it wasn't us using Screen Connect. Like we already had enumeration. We were already doing these other things, right? So,
and that's fair. Like
I
with the
love
scale
that.
of the attack, hindsight being 2020, they didn't achieve all that in the times.
I will give credit to Jason Slagle on this too, because we were in some private chat groups talking about this, and he kept saying, "Matt, I agree. Like I got you. But I'm just telling you, it would have taken longer to enumerate. They would have had to have done more to do these things, and I just don't think we're there yet." And I was like, no, man, it's definitely the timing, and you got this guy talking about it. So, like, I'm vindicated in my conjecture based on his conjecture. We can both be wrong. We can both be wrong. So understand that just because we're loud doesn't make us right. And so it is great to understand that this is going to change, and you need to understand how to get your facts straight. And we're going to play a game of Get Your Facts Straight here later with Tiffany Ricks. I'm super excited about it. She's a good friend of mine. So let's move to the next article. Dom, if you'll kick us off with this one. What's Lockbit doing? I thought they were gone. Weren't they gone?
Yeah, we got them, but this is the nature of the beast. So Lockbit, cybercrime gang, it was knocked offline by a comprehensive international police operation earlier this month. Says it has restored its servers and is back in business. They probably have better disaster recovery plans than most of us. The group, notorious on the internet's criminal underground for using malicious software. We know Lockbit's a ransomware group, right? So
and
Lockbit's
this is their personal leader, Lockbit Sup, right?
Yeah. And Lockbit's own website was used by police to taunt its ringleaders, and last Friday, police said its leader, Lockbit Sup, was cooperating with law enforcement without elaborating, and that's probably enough, right? There's long story short, these groups are really hard to kill, right? Like we've kind of talked about that in the past.
Can't kill knowledge,
right? And they have clearly
you can't kill knowledge.
And they have a resilience plan, and it clearly had some sort of disaster recovery ready to go. And I think if I'm running a criminal cyber group, I'm probably pretty interested in being ready when they come knocking, right? So they're back.
I just
they're
watched
taunting.
I just watched a DEF CON talk by a guy after he got out of federal prison from being a dark web vendor, and in his whole talk he's just talking about his OSINT OPSEC protections and things that he was doing. I get bored, so I watch stuff like that, right? But he was talking about how he was evading law enforcement, how he used the U.S. Postal Service as a weapon because they had to have a warrant to open the Postal Service package where DHS does not, and he just talked about all of those things. But to your point, like he said a lot of things around burning his identities. A lot of things in that regard are just PGP keys, right? And you just carry it around until you're like, nope, bye-bye, nope sauce. I'm dropping off this PGP key, and y'all get me another one. I'll have to build a new reputation, a new identity. And just don't forget that we think about this as cut and dry, but it really is more fluid than people like to believe it is. And that's why this challenge is the way it is.
Think about the anonymous concept, right? The idea of anonymous as a group having no single leader or being it's very similar to that. Anonymous very much did that on purpose, but at the end, this is not a registered trademark of a corporation, right? So it's not hard for them to reboot or someone else to reboot the same code and name.
And that's my point about the knowledge, right? If I have 9 people working on a project and we learn functionally how I could abuse WinRM or how I can do these types of things, then that knowledge isn't gone. Unless you lock up everybody involved and stop every bit of one from that, you're not going to change the socioeconomic forces that are driving it. You're not going to change the conditions that lay this out. You can't kill knowledge. And that's the whole challenge with this in general, is that the system is set up to allow for this to exist, right? If I ever decided I'm retiring from being good Matt, threat actor Matt would actually have it pretty good in a lot of places, right? And it's very easy. And so anyways, joking aside, I'm not trying to trivialize some of the challenges out there, but definitely you don't kill these things. They simply take that knowledge, redistribute, and you're even seeing conversations about this type of technique or tactic coming in, and it looks like this, and it was from these people back in this ransomware, and now I see NotPetya influences on this particular thing. That's just how it works, right? It's the same. It's an ecosystem. So, anyways, not to belabor the point, but yeah, good point, Dom. Next article. Let's do it.
What's next? Oh yeah,
This
so
one's
Loan
a
Depot
joyride.
says about 17 million customers had personal data and social security numbers stolen during cyber attack. Almost 17 million Loan Depot customers. Those are
Tiny, paltry sum.
Those are mortgagees.
Paltry.
Yeah, had sensitive personal information, including social security numbers, stolen in a January ransomware attack, and it's March. Kind of weird. The loan and mortgage giant company said in a data breach notice filed with Maine's Attorney General's office that the stolen Loan Depot customer data includes names, date of birth, email, and postal addresses, financial account numbers, and phone numbers. The stolen data also includes social security numbers, which Loan Depot collected from customers. Makes sense. They are a loan servicing company.
Got to get it. Loan service.
Numbers of affected Loan Depot customers rose from 16.6 million as initially disclosed.
Yeah.
So says the attack was around January 4th.
It left, this is the other side. Let's talk about where it happens. Left people unable to make payments, access online accounts in the weeks that followed. No telling how that's going to play out with automated foreclosure type proceedings, automated things that might have been around on the edge necessarily, or anything in that regard. Loan Depot is one of several loan and mortgage companies targeted by threat actors. They always want to make it like it's not that bad because everybody's targeted.
Third or fourth.
See this? Yeah. And you are right. We've seen tons of them. First American Financial Corporation, I think you had several of them in that regard. So, yeah, absolutely. This is a bunch of them. And why? I'll take you all the way back to the famous quote, right? Why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is, stupid. Right? Like, yeah, that's duh. So this is why we steal stuff from people that have juicy data bits. Yeah.
And these are bad too, because I wrote about this back around the First American Financial on my blog, and I wanted to point out the fact that a significant part of the securities trading market is backed on mortgages making their payments, right? So if the payments stop, the interest stops, and that doesn't go back into mortgage-backed securities, which, if it goes on too long, can cause major economic issues. So the whole idea of a loan servicer of that scale being stopped from conducting business,
scammed, fraudulent transfers of property, title impact from those things, the data and OSINT information I've gained, the value of those things. Like, there's so much. I mean, there's just so much, right? And so I think about
think
this
if you bought a house, how much information did you put on your mortgage application, right?
All of it. Yeah. It's going to be a big one, and they speak about it as they're stolen. They're obviously now a breach notification stage, right, of this. And again, we're going to see this same evidence broken down. This is going to be such a fun journey. If you're here with us, I hope you get to stay with us for the whole hour, because we're going to break down a really modern breach in their own words from their own team, and talk about the things that correlate to these exact things we're seeing. And as Tiffany and I have arm wrestled, and she wins most of the time, over the last few weeks preparing this conversation, it's been about, but they can't be in that shape. There's no way that's what we're actually seeing here, but in their own words, it's what we're seeing here. And I just want everybody to look at it from that perspective. All right, last one, Dom. Let's look at this last article.
Oh, the Mounties are under attack. So the RCMP is investigating cyber attacks.
Just the way it was said.
As its website remains down. So the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or RCMP, I'm going to steal that acronym point. Canada's National Police Force has disclosed that it recently faced a cyber attack targeting its networks. The federal body started its criminal investigation into the matter as it works to determine the scope of the security breach. Notably, no threat to safety and security of Canadians, which is good. Hopefully that's true.
I do want to point out that a term like bleeping computer actually becomes the authoritative news source for a lot of these breach notifications and conversations. I just want to soak in the deliciousness of that for a second.
I've been using bleeping computer my whole career.
It's so good. Me too.
It seems early, right? So while a breach of this magnitude is alarming, the quick work mitigation strategies put in place to demonstrate the significant steps the RCMP has taken to detect and prevent these types of threats. Hopefully that's pointing towards a mature IR plan and a well-orchestrated detect architecture. We don't have to keep beating this one up, but I brought this news article in because the RCMP is the big federal LEO agency of Canada, right? So imagine what they're dealing with. It's not unlike our FBI.
I just noticed something. So I maybe just, if you ever get an RFP response from me for a paper or a talk, I think there's something here. And if you want to take this and run with it, I think there's something here. I just noticed in all of these articles, about 3/4 through the article, there's always an apologetic statement. There's always some component that makes it okay for what they're dealing with. And the last one, it was, lots of people are being attacked right now. It doesn't matter to the dead guy. Still sucks. Right? like unfortunately. And in the same breath in this one, it was like, but RCMP certainly has sophisticated services and capabilities. You see these apologetic and almost, I wonder if we track this over time, do those things start going away and do we get more real? Right? Like at some point, do we get more real about this? You can't be like, they tried real hard and other people suck at their financial statements too. Nope, we just get real about it. They lied on their financial statements, right? I wonder how long before we're in that position. Anyways, just a side tangent, I suppose, Dom.
Well, I think it's PR, right? And I think people like you and me understand that that's frankly bullshit. And
that's fair.
But I think the public at large is expecting some sort of apology. But it would be nice to just see "Oops, we're sorry" instead of "But this guy over here."
See that? From Cisco here. They have been extremely transparent. And so I just wanted to say it's going to be awesome. Let's go ahead and hear some wise words about some changes in ISO from Robin Harris, and then we'll come back and meet with my good friend, fellow hacker and CEO, Tiffany. So.
Let's talk about the new ISO standard 27001 2022 version. It's out. And if you are going to transition to the new standard, my recommendation is start now. It's organized in a very different manner. They've reduced the number of controls from like 113 to 93. However, that's because they've combined some controls and they've added net new 11 new controls. And you'll look at those new controls, it's like information deletion, configuration management. Some of those things you might be doing, but you've never had to present that data to the auditor. But some of those things you're probably not doing, so you're going to need to put those controls in place. And your internal audit is going to have to cover everything. Not only that, they're going to add on a couple of extra days just for the transition. So this audit is going to be a little more intense than your standard typical audit, right? And you want to give your different stakeholders and control owners some time to understand, here are the new controls. Make sure you have everything in place and can provide evidence. And I recommend filling those 11 controls out and doing an assessment before you do your internal audit. Just look at those 11 controls and see where you stand. Work with the stakeholders and find out, is this a big lift for you? If this is just some additional paperwork, if you've got it, you want to know early. You want to give your control owners some prep time to understand, hey, here's what's changing. Here's what it means to you. And let's look at how you would provide the evidence that you are in compliance. And something else ISO did that I thought was very interesting. They relanguaged some of the controls and they snuck a few things in. So I'll give you an example when they talk about asset inventory. They specifically peeled out information assets. Information are assets. And you may not have been thinking about, do I have an inventory of where all my information is? Because you didn't have to go to that layer. So they stuck that in, and you'll see there are other controls where they've added a layer onto what you have to do in order to be compliant. So I'm going to invite you, if you're going to the new standard, and I hope you're not waiting because, they're going to retire the old standard and you don't want to be in the middle of, oh, I'm forced to do it. You want to do it now so that you can have a graceful transition instead of a reactive transition, right? And just prepare. They've changed how they've organized the controls. They've added new controls. They've snuck a few things into some of the old controls. They've actually put in a requirement that you have to sort of manage changes to the ISMS. I'm going to use our favorite word. They're leveling up. We have to level up also. I invite you to get started early and have a great year in terms of your ISO 27001 performance.
All right. Well, we are back, Dom. I think it's time to introduce my good friend, Tiffany Ricks. And this is March 1st, right? We did have our leap day yesterday for everybody. I don't know if you saw the shenanigans with certificates at Sophos. That was fun. Yeah, so this is March 1st, which is the beginning of Women's History Month. And I have CEO, fellow hacker, friend, and all-around person who likes to challenge me in most of the things we discuss, which is why we are such good friends. So, Tiffany, welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you here. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, Matt. Thank you for having me. And yes, I'm glad to be here on the first day of Women's History Month. Behind me, I have a visual of one of the first computers. And so I'm really excited to be standing on the shoulders of my ancestors and really excited to be sharing about technology, cybersecurity awareness, and all the fun things we're going to talk about today. I'm really excited. But my background, I am a former ethical hacker. So I started my journey in software engineering. I took the typical journey of starting as a coding nerd. I love all things coding, innovation, and then moved into working with the Department of Defense, held a secret clearance, build solutions with them. And one of my jobs later in my career was working with the Air Force and the Navy as a civilian and showing them how cyber criminals could break into their infrastructure, manipulate people through social engineering tactics, left that place and started my own consultancy that had a managed service side, that had a red team side. And I was able to combine all of my loves, which is software, cybersecurity, human behavior, and built that consultancy for some time and started Hackware, which is our social engineering security awareness platform that makes it easy for partners to train their employees and end users on how to combat phishing attacks. So I'm really excited to be here. And yes, Matt, get ready. I'm going to challenge you. So let's go.
Now you said social engineering. And I just want to make sure that 90% return on investment that I've sent that money to you for is still going to pay out, right? You're not social engineering me here, correct?
Hey, look, it's definitely an investment. Keep sending those funds, and you'll see a return.
Yeah. Man, I'm looking forward to it. Okay, good. I need it. I got to pay for another motorcycle.
And tell your friends.
Yeah, tell your friends. Now you're going to expand it on my shoulders? You're a terrible human. That's horrible.
That's it.
All right, Dom, so what we're planning on doing today, and maybe you can kick off this event and this incident as you remember it, is I wanted to find an incident that we could take that had enough detail about it from a trusted source, break it down into its constituent components of a bit of a timeline, and then find those things against where there's failures and opportunities for improvement, right? Where we can get better, where we all want to get better. But I think it'll also show some very interesting corollaries of the things that we all deal with and are all challenged by. So, Dom, you remember the Cisco compromise from
one of my favorites.
About 2022. Okay, let's do it. Give me what you remember about it before we dive into it.
The thing that stands out to me was the creativeness of the initial access, right? The ability to pivot off of the fact that someone was super proud to get hired and shared that, and so quickly
stored a
made
credential.
Right.
Yeah.
So quickly made them a victim that when they stored their brand new login from their manager, that drove initial access. And that's, I mean, I don't mean my favorite as I enjoyed that it happened, but like,
sure. So you looked
the
a little
creativity
excited
there. Yeah, but the creativity there deserves, a little recognition.
Well, creativity, or like this whole Hanlon's razor that says never attribute to malice, what could just as easily be attributed to kind of right, and so stupidity or accident. And in this case, I think a threat actor could have theoretically even just stumbled on a victim. But to your point, it could have been targeted. Let's dig into it. Here's our sources. I'll go ahead and bring those up, if you will, for me. We used 2 blog articles. One was Bleeping Computer, because as we referenced earlier, they have become kind of that de facto, at least trusted or haven't been sued out of existence source. And then the other side, which is Cisco Talos. Like, it doesn't get any better than literally Cisco Talos. That's actually an emergency response team call, but I actually know who's handling that. So that may keep happening, and I can't stop it. So I will stop it quickly. Okay, so Cisco Talos is an article, actually breaks this down at a very tactical level. So what I've done, and you can go read them yourselves. We'll put these links in the actual notes for anybody that's here. And also, this may be a little Johnny foreshadowing for a session that I'm going to be having at Right of Boom. If you haven't registered yet, please join us at Right of Boom. If you need to reach out to me, please let me know, and I'll get you a code, maybe if we still have one, for the discount, and also getting you registered for our pre-day. But this is a bit of what we're going to dig into. It's kind of a little bit of a way to show you a little bit of what we're going to be doing during that. All right, so this is the 2 pieces we're using. Everybody's been kind of read into that. Let's start with the talk. We're then going to break it down into what we think as practitioners for a few seconds, and really rapid fire go through each one of these 16 bullet points in this kill chain. Is everyone in the audience hopefully familiar with kill chain? Dom, if you don't mind, give me, what is kill chain in your mind?
It is the chain, ironically, of events that leads to a successful, typically some form of access, and then beyond that, whatever you were planning to do, detonate ransomware, steal data, etc.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. So the kill chain is the things and the steps necessary. And where this idea came was, I did a talk for a bunch of 8th graders. And what we did was we put up a kill chain of simulated events, right? In this case, it was a simulated event of pretending to be a loved one's Facebook page, saying that I lost access to my Facebook page, convincing that person to give address information to the threat actor, ultimately ending in a kidnapping. And I asked the kids in the crowd to give ideas of how they could have stopped it, right, in an effort to teach. And this one little girl raises her hand quite meekly and says, "Couldn't I just have called Grandma?" And I was like, yes, Amazon card for you. You win. You get all the points. And so what we're going to do is talk about that, and then as a team, we're going to talk about where could we have stopped this in the kill chain. All right, let's look at it. So the first one, in the initial access broker, or an IAB, believed to be tied to UNC 2447 and Lapsus, 2 separate gangs, beginning in this kill action. So they had a threat actor that was an initial access broker, somebody that gets in and gains access. All right, y'all, I think these are the ones we're going to talk about. Control 6.3. But Dom, what are your thoughts on this for 30 seconds, and then we'll go to Tiffany next, and then we'll move on.
I think we're a little too early in the kill chain to get detailed, but let's talk about IABs for a second, right? An IAB, all they're doing is gaining initial penetration into something quietly, ideally, and selling that off. So if you can detect really quickly, right, you have a mature detect infrastructure, you could have detected this at step 1 and killed the initial access before they sold.
But this is his personal account, and so remember, we're in the personal kill chain. So I'll just add clarity to that. So this is
it was a Google
Johnny
account,
or Bill.
and Google does alert you on weird stuff.
That's true.
It was probably weird stuff.
And 6.3, I'll just go ahead and say mine real quick, and then Tiffany, yours. 6.3 is require MFA for externally exposed applications. My thought is he either wasn't trained well enough, or he didn't have MFA enabled even on his personal account or her personal account in this instance, and that was my thought on it. Tiffany, what are your thoughts on this initial access broker getting the personal access account to their Google?
Yeah, I think this is a super important. This is an interesting attacker journey, but it is very common, and this is why we have to make things personal to people to get them to care, because cyber criminals are going to their personal accounts. They know that maybe the corporate journey may be a little bit more challenging, but the personal account is definitely a way for them to kick off this attack. And so I think it's on par. I think it's on par for past attacks and future ones.
And it's going to get easier to attack that low-hanging fruit and hope that you've made mistakes like we're going to see here. The victim, this human, synced their corporate accounts to their personal Gmail account. Dom, start us off.
Man, I hate Google's password manager. It's better than no password manager. But understand, if I steal your Google password, right, and you do not have MFA, I now have all your passwords, right? So I have a Google account. I use it extensively, but it does not have passwords. So that would be my number one thing. I'm not going to tell you not to put corporate passwords in places that are secure and safe for you, because I do that, right? Like, I don't know my Pax8 password, but I have it to use as a backup in case I'm somewhere with no internet and a broken FIDO key or something. But yeah, I hate Google's password manager.
Tiffany, your thoughts on this? We're going to keep it moving because we got 16 of these.
No, I think my quick thoughts on this is the quick thought on this is yeah, unfortunately, the best practice of we need a separation of access where we don't have a single point of failure, and this is what this user created, a single point of failure. And so yeah, I think security awareness training, but on best practice, recent best practice, because if they would have learned something maybe a year ago, I think they would have been taught to put it all in a password manager in your browser. That would have been okay, I think.
Yeah, and a separate one that isn't dumpable, right? I've got a friend of mine, Britton, that is on LinkedIn. He just posts the victim as Redline malware, other malware and info stealers, and just posts out their corporate credentials. I mean, he obfuscates them a smidge, a little bit, but ultimately kind of points out that it's that easy. And so a lot of people find themselves. Let's look at the next piece. I agree with training.
One PowerShell line will dump your saved Chrome passwords. Just remember that.
Exactly. And Dom, I'll add one more piece to it when it comes back to the Pax8 password. At some point, why should we have a password to that? Why would we not have an entry point that is a FIDO or that is a other methodology that didn't have a password to save somewhere, where we have this entry point that doesn't have creds tied to it, maybe?
Now, to be fair, at the risk of the clock, my Pax8 password is a very long, random series of
it's true. I have no idea. Fair.
So you couldn't even torture it out of me. I'm just saying, you know.
I would still go for trying. Anyways, okay, so the corporate creds synced. Google account contains corporate creds, right? And I say presumed in here because I presume this cred was a VPN cred, right? They don't really specify in the article that it was directly. They do say they use the VPN, but that VPN cred could be AAA, right, where its authentication, authorization, and auditing have been centralized. And that might be everything cred. That might be my user identity and cred for everything single sign-on and further. We don't know that. But for now, let's just say it got them access to the VPN. And, you know, this is that syncing of that I'm talking about, right? Like, this would be in the browser. I've got this cred, and I've gone, you know what? I'm saving that cred and moving it forward. And that was redacted.
Good you
You're good.
censored
It's
the
got a
last
pretty
name,
picture
so no
of
one
Matt.
says what it is.
Yeah. Nobody will know it's me because the beard and the last name aren't there. So we're good. We're fine. It's censored. You can leave it. It's cool. Good stuff. Yeah. So, right. And so, yes, I'm hiding under the beard. Nobody knows it's Matt. All right. 2.1. Tiffany, you had the idea for this failure in your mind. Explain this for me, where you think there might have been this software aspect, and you kind of explain that, and we'll chat that out.
Yeah, I think we should really, when we think about assets, we need to look at the browser as a software asset. And that software asset, we need to definitely make sure that we're continuously monitoring it. We're looking at how we can maintain certain controls, access management. And so I really believe we need to really think about the browser and just different software elements, dependencies, and really look at that as an asset.
Yeah, and my take on this too, and Dom, I'll kick it to you, is 2.1 says know your software. 4.1 says, hey, configure your stuff, right? Set it up and configure it. If you don't need this service, disable it. Like, maybe if you don't need to store passwords in your browser because you have a password manager you expect your users to use, maybe disable the ability to do so, right? Like, those would be the pieces I'm talking about. And then you get into 5.2 as this using unique passwords, is extensibility of hopefully that VPN password isn't directly all of these other pieces. And maybe that's okay, right, with SSO and that earlier description. And then 9.1 is this have used known and, supported browsers and email clients. And by supported, it doesn't just mean that it's up to date. It says that literally, but when you think about it, it's, can I configure it? Is this a browser like Opera where I may have to buy some third-party package to configure it, or is it something like Edge where I can manage it in Intune? Those are the things you have to think about in that in my mind. Dom, what are your few seconds on this piece since I just gobbled up all the
It's a
air?
gross word, but
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
yeah, I mean, I think we beat this one up enough, right? The creds were synced, and I would make conjecture that it is some sort of SSO and something, LDAPs or something on the back end is happening.
Sure.
And that's how they're authenticating.
Oh gosh. Lightweight directory access protocol. Yes, I think I got it. I didn't look it up, but I may be wrong. Lightweight directory access protocol.
It is lightweight directory access protocol.
Yes, man, winning. I get the point. Thank you.
But sorry. Yeah, I don't know. We got to get further in the kill chain. Form an opinion.
Okay, let's move forward. We're going. Next step. What happens next? We've got this juicy VPN. We've accessed it, and I want to add some clarity to this too, because we're accessing this VPN from the extra stuff we're going to get to at the bottom, from an asset that wasn't the victim's asset, right? They pivoted to some other controlled asset where the logs aren't going to be yours, the things that you're not going to have won't be there. So I want to give that clarity. Okay, now we bring in Yandoang ransomware gang. So this one is actually partnering with, or in some way presumed to be sold to, these credentials so that they can go enumerate, egress, double extort, ransom, right? Those pieces of that. So our failure here is I didn't bring any failure points for this. I just wanted to bring everybody in the audience to know they partnered with somebody, right? And we can speak towards this. Dom, we've seen people partner because they don't bring the expertise, and it helps you understand the ecosystem. What are your thoughts on this partnership, this joyous, wonderful malice pool?
Yeah,
together?
Look, cybercrime is a commercial marketplace, right? It's illicit, yes. It's illegal, yes, but it is a commercial marketplace, and people who are really good at gaining initial access aren't very good at writing ransomware, right? There's no correlation to those two skills, generally speaking. So if I can buy access from an IAB, right, an initial access broker, and I focus on making really great ransomware, right, really great in terms of code quality, not outcomes,
sure.
I now form partnerships and I achieve my goal, and they achieve their goal. And in the commercial marketplace concept, everyone just made money.
Well, and we just saw this, Tiffany. You literally partnered with the United States Navy as a civilian to bring X knowledge, right? Why don't you speak towards this partnership and why this often forms?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to everybody has a core capabilities, skill capabilities, and let's all utilize our capabilities for this common goal, this shared vision that we have. And so, yes, on the government side, they did that well. On the threat actor side, they're doing it well. I think they're oftentimes they may collaborate and do that better because the outcome is we're going to get these resources, this data, and it isn't this competitive thing where I want us to be the first who has found this out and has done X, Y, and Z things for corporate gain. I feel like it all works, but I think the motivation on the threat actor side, I feel like they collaborate better than we do on the private.
Yeah,
on the private.
That last point is the biggest one, I think, right?
Yeah.
To your point.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to our wonderful roadmap of the kill chain here. So we've now left the personal kill chain, right? Because what's presumably happened is throughout this path to sell to this ransomware gang, someone said, "Oh my gosh, I have a Cisco cred. I have access to a Cisco VPN. Oh my goodness, I need someone that can take that next step." Right, to your point. In the next steps, we see them coming in with gathering OSINT information or open source intelligence information up there, right? So gathering OSINT. Dom, what is OSINT when it comes to this? They gathered information about the MSPs and the people that supported Cisco, right? So why? What are they doing there?
Yeah, I mean, you're doing that for what it says in the name. You need intelligence, right? If you're gonna orchestrate really any kind of operation, and we could use the military if we wanted, but it doesn't really matter. You need to know everything you can about your target, and if you can gather solid OSINT, you're gonna find weaknesses. You're gonna find something that you can use for leverage. It might turn into blackmail. It might turn into more capabilities around social engineering, or like nowadays it's going to turn into an access key for an S3 bucket and in GitHub, right? But OSINT is typically what you're accidentally screaming to the world or purposely screaming to the world, and it's being misused.
Yeah. Tiffany, can you point out some examples of OSINT that you would go gather, just not to put you on the spot, but back in the day?
No,
I can
absolutely.
think of a few in my mind.
Absolutely. This is my jam. This is where there's so much data out there and so much that is shared on LinkedIn. There's so much a social engineering a bad actor can find to pull off a personalized phishing attack. And in this case, phishing attack, where you can see if they're a new employee, like what Dom said, he believes that this employee was a new employee at this organization who was eager and willing to act. If you see that lifestyle change of the organization of this employee online, you can see that they're a new employee, they're in this role, this is who they potentially communicate with or report to. On the organization, you can see lifestyle changes where there may be a merger, acquisition, announcement of a partnership. There's so much you can learn that you can use against that individual to pull off an attack. And so OSINT is my jam. There's so much information you can use to get what you want out of people.
I figured I might trigger you on that one just a smidge. And to see which ones I've pinned for this, 14.4 is train workforce on data handling best practices, right? Like locking your screen, walking away from it. Like, I do hashtag lock it up 2024 where I take pictures of unlocked screens in an OSINT, hopefully, OPSEC capable way where I'm not trying to dox them completely, but at least saying, hey, I found another one. And then 14.5 is unintentional data exposure. Those are things like potential leaks about information. I just got this new job. I just got assigned to this new big client. I just got assigned to this new case. Right, you look at some of the targeting even in recent Fulton County, Georgia type stuff. You have this very intelligent and targeted aspect to make a point and driving down that point. So I think
just a quick tangent, and I know we're burning the clock, but a critical part of your training is OPSEC or operational security, and we miss that so often in security training, where you need to be careful what you're talking about out in the real world, right? Because little pieces of information can lead to a lot. In the military, we have posters, loose lips sink ships, and like OPSEC training is everything there. But we don't do it very well in the private sector, and we could get better at it.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. All right, so we agree this is definitely training. Go ahead, Tiffany. Yes, ma'am.
Well, really quick, I think when we were preparing for this, you brought up a good piece. Even on the engineering side, like all of the things that is broadcast. If we just make a call to a certain server and it tells us all the details of the dependencies on what they built, that's OSINT information that can be used against an organization.
You mean F12 can tell you things about an application and the infrastructure we're trying to attack? You're blowing my mind right now, Tiffany Ricks.
Full software versions in the server header? No.
Yeah, full software versions.
Let's not.
In the server header.
That's exactly where this came up, wasn't it? In the sense that, and I said this to a bunch of CISOs the other day, if you're building a product, don't respond back in your HTTP header the information I need to know of which one I want to attack, right? That makes it just too easy for me. Even a dumb like me can code my way through that problem. Okay. So let's talk about the next step. They logged into the VPN. They used these harvested credentials. They've now made, because think about it this way. In 5, there actually isn't anything, there's some illegal because they compromised the personal account, but there's nothing illegal against this company yet, right? We've just, at this point, gathered information, right? Britton White would be an example of that. He's helping people understand there's that information out there. And so now we're like logged into the VPN. In my mind, this talks to, and they speak about this later, that I was able to get in, which meant I came from a device that wasn't a device they were tracking in that regard. 13.8 is getting into deploy NIPS, right? You said this one, Tiffany, so I'll let you speak to it, or network intrusion prevention solution. I caught my own point. I'm glad I didn't mess that up. 13.5 is manage access control for remote assets. And it actually says in there, like, we're talking about up-to-date any malware. Well, guess what? I bet the threat actor's computer wasn't running my newest version of Sentinel-1 or CrowdStrike, right? Like, I have a high suspicion that was the case. Configuration compliance wasn't there, although they have done that. There have been examples where they've actually emulated the environment under their own control, though. Configuration compliance, like how is my secure configuration set up? Do I have these things set the way, and maybe even presumably with passwords in email browsers? But yeah, and then 13.1 gets into having a SIM, and they call this out later in Cisco's own Talos advice of, hey, centralizing event alerting would be very valuable. Anybody have anything they want to add on 6 that they were able to log in, period, without any other validation, certificate-based or otherwise? Like, add another asset, uncontrolled?
It's a little scary. We don't We don't know the full story, and they're not gonna, there's definitely parts of this they're not going to tell, and I think that's acceptable. But I am concerned that the timeline we've built out of this article goes from gathered OSINT to now has access into a network. Like there was no middle compromise
And lots of access. Yeah.
And that's actually a little bit terrifying to me.
Yeah, which this is the next step. Here's where Tiffany comes alive, right? And bringing up this piece, because this is how they got through that first armor. Because to your point, Dom, they're signing in somewhere else. It's going to trigger an MFA, and you have an ignorant, I don't mean this negatively, but an unaware user getting pushes. Let's talk about that. Tiffany, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think the thought on this is that there's a couple things. Of course, we want to talk about the CIS control and how the user needs to get trained on social engineering best practices. But the problem, the way the threat actor was able to gain success was they did a two-factor approach. So they did MFA fatigue, which is they continuously sent push notifications to the user to be able to gain access to that device. Where they added validity to this was they did a phishing, a voice-based phishing attack where they called the user and they told them that there could have been something. Yeah, they called the user and they're saying that maybe that your account has been compromised. And I'm just assuming this is what happened. I don't know what happened, but I'm assuming that some threat actor called them and said that your account has been compromised. I'm sending these MFA notifications to come through, and go ahead and go through the process of moving forward with the next step. And so that sort of adds validity, where I think if they just left the MFA fatigue there by itself and they were getting all of these notifications, maybe that would have caused alarm, but the vishing, I think, added validity to it, which allowed them to trust it and move forward.
And they can only do effective vishing if they've done effective gathering. It can't be bad data. It can't make you feel sus, right? And Dom, that's one of the reasons you brought up the value of OSINT earlier, is just how much it can make it seem more real and place you in a position of fear.
Right. And remember, this is what happened to Uber, right? I believe it was they were using Duo and they didn't have code verification. And it's another training element, right? Microsoft forced you to turn on number matching to the extent that you actually have to type the number. It's not 1 out of 3 anymore, right? You cannot turn that off, but you have to follow that up with training users that there is literally never a circumstance where I need that number, right? It's not a thing. And if you can drive that training home, it will help a huge amount, because getting a call asking for that number should be, or asking you to type a number or whatever, should be an immediate alarm, right? Should be like, hell no, hang up, call the real IT people, right?
Well, it's almost Schrodinger's.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was about to say. It's almost Schrodinger's problem, in the sense that you have a person calling you saying, I will either have access to this code because I am potentially your support team, or I am pawning you right now. So it is Schrodinger's, which means if you are trying to train users, you have to train them. It's probably not the good outcome. Cat in the box with poison, like, probably not going to work out long term. Like, if I'm really serious about this Schrodinger's problem, not to make it a smaller problem.
You have to be specific in that training, right? Like banks actually do this. When they send you your MFA code, they say, we will never ask you for this. And that needs to be the same training you drive home for push fatigue is, we will never need this number, nor will we ever need to ask you to type a number under any circumstances. And then never ask them to do that, right? Find another way to fix the problem or whatever you need to do.
Absolutely. All right, we've got about 7 more to go, so let's get to the next one. We now have gotten access. This is the first point we actually gained access, right? Because the user now got tired. They even say in their own post, the user just finally, they even say whether or not. They even say that we don't know why the user ultimately did this, and it's really great when we get to that point. Okay, so presumably they then said they lateralized. They went to Citrix host. They went to their DC, which means to me, in my mind, 13.8, deploy a network prevention solution, is at the very least the failure. It's also probably a 13.1. It's also a 13.11. It's also a 13.10 from an application layer filtering potentially. There's all kinds of challenges here. But first, they start with the user context, which would be normal. But once they started to do other things, how did they go to a DC? And Tiffany, you and I were talking off show. I don't want to beleaguer it because I do want to get to some of these other points. But is it because they were an admin, or is it because everybody has admin? Is everybody a local admin? Do they wind up not doing that 5.x for separation of duties, right? How did I wind up being able to do phishing for SPNs or service principal names? Sorry. Or how did I wind up being able to do LLMR? Local link, you're going to beat me to this one, Dom. LLMR poisoning against IPv6 because of line of sight. Whatever it may be, we'll just like have a wasted point if nobody wants to go for the point, but LLMR poisoning. How is it I'm able to do those things? And then we'll bounce over to now they've gotten over to other machines, and now they're saying we escalated. They gained domain admin, right? They got to escalation. Go ahead, Dom, what's the point?
All right. Link local multicast name resolution.
Yeah, it's a failback name resolution protocol from DNS. And it's actually one of the earlier steps. And so if you go out and respond to someone and say, I am this file share, they'll pass you their hash that I can then go pass on somewhere else potentially as a response to an NTLM challenge. So, okay. Anyways, not to get too nerdy, I'm trying to keep this a little bit higher level. But ultimately, the gain domain admin, I think that is a failure in 10.1 from an anti-malware. They talked about using Mimikatz, LSAS dump. They talked about doing things of that nature in the TTPs that we are going to see. 13.1, again, the SIM should have correlated that. 13.11, you should have tuned those security alerts to hit you at the right time. Anybody have thoughts on the fact that they didn't catch domain admin at this point? I think that is where they said they caught them, actually. Once you see Cisco's write-up, they actually said this is what caught them, was the domain admin side. But what are y'all's thoughts?
I mean, I'm thinking this is a multi-million-dollar organization. I find it really hard. I mean, a multi-billion-dollar organization that's spending millions of dollars on cybersecurity. I find it hard to believe that everyone has admin access. I really do believe that this was cyber criminals were smart. They knew who to target. They looked at this person on LinkedIn, found a way to get to them, and then got access to their account and was able to get lateral access or escalate into other accounts. But it's hard for me to believe that they were.
I don't know this threat actor, but I would agree. Like with the amount, even just like if you look at the amount of government and high-end corporate business that Cisco does. I mean, Cisco is the basis of a lot of the networking. There are plenty of Cisco devices in between you and me having this conversation right now.
Yeah, true story.
It would just blow my mind. I'm leaning more towards, and again, I don't know this threat actor, but they had to, I think they had to have some sort of exploit that was readily available in Windows, pre-patch Tuesday kind of thing, or something to that effect. Could more have been done in terms of network isolation and NIPS detecting that, like, why are you querying the DC like this? Yes, for sure. Yeah. But admin access, man, that would blow me away.
Yeah.
I
think NIPS or NIDS, both sides of it, network intrusion detection and prevention, right, from both sides of that. So you get my other point. I don't want to miss it. But I calling me the pessimist on this. I used to be a smiling young man. My eyes were all happy, and now I look at security a little differently, Dom. I'm a little more jaded. Potentially. It's okay. I still smile, but maybe you're right. Okay, let's move on. Number 10, establish persistence, right? They started to work towards this. 8.8, logging. 13.1, SIM capabilities to go. Why did we just have a new scheduled task created that has these kind of repetitive things? Why do we have these triggered startup things? Why do we have whatever it may be? Why did we have some service principal added? Why do we whatever it may be? And so I think we can all talk about persistence to death. I don't want to beat this to death. I want to get us caught up. We got just a few minutes left. Sensitive data enumeration. This is another one of those opportunities where someone could have caught someone at this stage. When I'm starting to look around and actually find all the data that I want to steal, that are those juicy bits, right? They go in their own article to say that they saw pre-ransomware activities like data enumeration, sensitive data enumeration. I think there's failures in 8.5 when it comes to those from a logging perspective, and 8.11 as well. And I think that as we start thinking about sensitive data enumeration, that's when you should have the most capability of detecting, right? 8.5 says configure detailed audit logging for anything containing sensitive data. Includes source, date, username, timestamp, source, address, useful elements that could help with a forensic investigation. 8.11 says conduct audit log reviews. Find when somebody's touching sensitive data. Dragos showed us a great example of that, right? Dragos saw when people were trying to access control sensitive data and said, out, you're done, you're not a real person. And I think that's one of those growth areas. I'm going to get us caught up because I want these Cisco points to be covered. They had some great writing in here. Egression of sensitive data, right? Somebody was able to send this data. That's your next opportunity to catch it. You should be seeing that someone's sending data. That's a 13.1 or a 10.1 MDR type service, right? Managed detection and response as a capability of saying, why do we have that? One of the juiciest parts that came out of this, Dom, was that the bleeping computer article, and that's why I left it, was they found their NDA with Cisco leaked as part of this exfil, right? So I just found that just a little juicy, that it was their NDA about this. So anyways, yeah. All right, last parts of the kill chain. We now have data out. That is now defined what, Dom? What would you define sensitive data potentially out? That takes it from an incident to a, you don't have to say it.
Breach.
I'm not gonna make you say it.
Breach.
It is the word. It would make that a breach if you have sensitive data that has been egressed. Efforts to minimize. They then showed the tradecraft of them actually trying to hide their tracks, and I'm going to show you some of those here real quick.
Wait. Actually hold on, because we said the B word on this show, and we hate the B word on this show. So we go back up.
You do hate the B word. Okay, yep. That's
how
fair.
many?
We can't just roll by that. Is what you're saying?
Let's point this out. How many steps did we make it down the kill chain before we called it a breach? 12.
12.
So we covered 12 events before we were
Yes,
willing
right.
to make conjecture that it was a breach. I just want to point out we did use the word,
Yeah.
but only after 12 steps in the kill chain.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, we get into UNC 244. Somebody's reading about UNC 2447, Vintage Sombrat. Maybe just another one of their use of TTPs and 0 days and things. Very good. Okay, very good. So, good call out, Dom. Absolutely. All right, the effort to clean it up. And as we go back to this tradecraft, they're doing like Windows Event Util, delete, CL, log name, clear log name, net user, their new user, delete that user. Right? They're trying to do obfuscation, cleanup, and deletion of forensics evidence, which is one of the things that I'll call out that Cisco probably did really well, but also most MSPs need to grow in, which is the ability to actually have logs that are either immutable or somewhere remote and centralized that wouldn't be destroyable. But also in the same breath, I think there's a component of making sure you manage the sensitivity of logs in there. And actually, I think I have my timing out of order, but we'll come back and add on these as we wrap it up. They should be down here. Yeah, look at that. Oh, terrible timing. Oh, they're all 13.1. That's why the timing's out of order. So in my mind, a lot of this stuff is 13.1. Right? SIM would be the thing that correlates a lot of information together where we now can make decisions on it. Threat actors attempted to hide their tracks. Yeah, go ahead, Dom.
And if we get precise, like I've always made the joke that if your users are running PowerShell, there's a problem, right? So look for PowerShell running. That like receptionists do not run PowerShell scripts. So if they run a PowerShell script, that's an alert.
Oh wait, no, not often. Yes, usually.
And like
the point.
Windows Event Util. Why are you running Windows Event Util? If your user is doing that,
yes,
you need to have a conversation with them. You know.
Which could take it back to Tiffany being right. Maybe this person was an incident responder or somebody in that space that had the permissions and day-to-day functions that would have been okay doing this. But let's talk about running an LSAS dump. Let's talk about running mini dump. Let's talk. There's so many opportunities here that blow my mind that ever happen when you get into the actual tactics of this. So Cisco had a list of the things that would help. Talos. This was the advice from an advisor, Talos, giving advice to Cisco about what they should fix. And this is how you get a lot of context out of this. 1. Long words to say social engineering bad. Teach about social engineering. 2. It's 14.2 social engineering education. 2. Equally important to MFA. Is teaching people how to deal with it. How are you going to be social engineered specifically to this type of MFA? 14.6, speaking about that aspect. Number 3, prior to allowing VPN connections from remote endpoints, ensure posture checking is configured to enforce a baseline set of controls. Guess what, boys and girls? 13.5 is that exactly. Number 4, network segmentation is another important security control. Yep. I cried a little, right, Tiffany, when I said this one. You were on the call with me, and I'm like, what? Like, yes, maybe we should network segment at a company that makes network products for network segmentation as a result. Just being that guy personally. God bless us. I'm recovering. I'm fine. Let's move on. 12.2 and 12.3, secure network design. 12.2 is secure network design. 13.4, right? And I think 13.4 is going to be into filtering for network segmentation, as I understand. Let's make sure. Yeah, perform traffic filtering between network segments, right? 13.4. 5, centralized log collection. Really? Okay.
Perhaps.
Centralized log collection, perhaps. Like, that's the whole point of a SIM. That's the whole point of this. That's what we do.
Didn't they just buy Splunk too?
8.9.
Just saying.
I think, right? Am I
just
right
saying.
on that? Yeah. Yeah. Just saying.
I'm pretty
8,
sure
9,
Cisco
8,
bought
11.
Splunk.
Yeah, and then centralized is 8.9. 8.11 is to I believe it's log filtering, right? Let me make sure I'm correct on this. 8.11 is conduct audit log reviews, right? Reviewing them and making sure that they're actually something happening. You'll find it.
Now, actually, just to steal the clock again, but like, do we think? And we're conjecturing here, so don't sue us. We're just thinking
this is the clock. We're done. This is all of it. Right here.
Was this an 8.9 failure of collecting the logs, or was this an 8.11 failure of some logging mechanism began to fail and it was never spotted? Right, because I don't believe that Cisco doesn't like have a SIM and monitor logs. They literally bought a SIM.
Sure, so, it's about efficacy after that. Yeah.
Did something break and they never caught that, or they failed to bring new assets into log collection or something like that?
Yeah, or some of the agents were disabled along the way. There was tradecraft in play potentially, right? Tiffany, what are your thoughts on just the advice you're seeing given from Talos? Yeah, in general here.
I think on the alert side or the log side, I think the logging is there. I'm thinking it's alert fatigue. I'm thinking someone didn't do their job of monitoring, and there isn't any automated process with logs. Typically, it's about bringing awareness, but a human is doing the action. I don't think there's anyone that is actually like, go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just going to say, and no, I was agreeing with you, but I had one more. Yeah. I just wanted to let the team know to bring it up. But yeah, continue. Sorry.
No, that was it. I just think on the network side, I think someone just failed doing their job. I mean, just on the research that I looked at, it took 4 days from when the incident happened to when they found it. It took 4 days, and so that's a short amount of time. But I think someone wasn't monitoring the logs.
And back to my talk about giving escape points. This is hard. There's a reason this is hard. And so I'm not trying to be that. Maybe I'm the third part of the article that gives the apology here, but this is hard. I'm not trying to beat them up. My heart is with them. They didn't fail. They actually stopped the threat actor from deploying ransomware, and yet we all look at it as the failure. And I agree with you. I feel with you, and I love it because we're having to live both sides of this while we talk about it, but also know, God bless, there's a lot of places could have been better, right? And to your point,
but they did fail because the data was lost. I think there was like 30.
No, I get it.
There was
I know why you're
exfiltration.
right. Yeah, you are right. And 8. One of the other aspects was auditing command line execution. This goes back to yours, Dom, and you said this, and Tiffany, you also said this. Like, if a user's executing PowerShell, we need to know that. And if somebody starts typing PowerShell space NOP for no profile, and they're going to execute something from pastebin, I sure as heck want to know that, right? And if I'm going to egress data from something like think about it. They pulled down Mimikatz. They pulled down other tools. They did PowerSploit, Mimikatz. Like, they used tools that should be hashed. I don't even mean, okay, I'm going to get off I'm not going to fall and break my neck here. But these aren't things that should have been that hard. Okay, I'm done.
A somewhat sophisticated threat actor, right? So I think they've probably defeated the hashing conversation just fine. So to be fair to Cisco.
All right, I'm down.
The idea that I ran PowerShell and it connected to a thing is kind of crazy to me. Now, to Tiffany's point, like maybe they were an incident responder, maybe they had a business need to do those kind of things.
Yeah.
But man,
PowerShell, we don't know.
Preventing scripts is a group policy object. If you didn't know, it's also an Intune object. You can just turn it off for your users. You can just say no.
I also wanted to add that the whole reason of walking through this is looking at this. These are all things that were solved by safeguards. These are all things you could have stopped it at step 2, and at step 3, and at step 4, and at step 5, and at step 6, and at step not 12. It's not 12. So this is hashtag not 12. I appreciate y'all hanging out with us today. We've run out of time for this, Tiffany. I hope you enjoyed this as much as we did, and I hope the audience got something out of this and how they can fix it. There were some questions I wanted to answer. In this case, somebody said that they were wondering if by restricting VPN to only known good IP addresses, can it help? Definition of help, yes, and that you're reducing the subset of where I can attack, but it doesn't mean that user wasn't compromised at the house. It doesn't mean that there wasn't a proxy out of that space. And so don't take it as an end-all, be-all, but definitely take it as limiting your attack surface by making certain key decisions and then deciding if you can live with them. If you have a highly transient environment, you're probably not going to be able to live with that. But if you've got people working at their same house in their same apartment with the same static IP for 12 years, probably okay. And anyways, thank you for hashtag not 12 in the chat. I appreciate everybody. We've run over time. I want to be cognizant of that. Thank y'all so much. Dom, if you'll close us out.
Tiffany, thanks so much for joining us. This is a really fun episode unpacking this really big incident and so much. Just one more shout out. The amount of transparency in that is crazy. That came out of Cisco. They were that transparent. So huge props for that. That is our show for the week. Next week, Matt will be joining from Vegas, I believe. That is the week of Ride of Boom. So make sure you see us there. We'll see you next week.